Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my next chess tournament. This is the Washington Chess Congress. It is currently 11:23 p.m. I just finished a game which started at 7. The lighting in my room is really stupid. There's actually a lot of kind of like little stupid things about the hotel. Like the desk has a glass casing on it, so my mouse doesn't work. So I had to find like a random piece of paper and use it as a mouse pad. Anyway, also, my tournament is not getting broadcasted anywhere because it's being run by the Continental Chess Association, which is the largest chess tournament organizing body in the United States. They almost never broadcast games, and also you have to bring your own chess sets, which is virtually unheard of, particularly for grandmasters and international masters. Like when I traveled in Europe, there was 100, everybody had a chess set, but there was 100 broadcasted boards. So just goes to show you the way America handles chess versus other parts of the world. But I will say that, there are private clubs that do a very good job organizing. Anyway, my first round opponent, this was a really strange game for a handful of reasons that I will get into. My opponent's rated 2,043 FIDE and 2235 USCF, American. For comparison, I'm 2362, and there's a link in the description if you'd like to follow along at least the standings and the pairing. So my opponent plays c4. For this tournament, my prep is either e5 or g6. I mean, it kind of depends on my mood. I've been doing a lot of studying of the English myself with white, so I'm familiar with the e5 lines, but I wanted to go for g6. And I was really hopeful that, my opponent would put another pawn in the center and let me play some of my modern course stuff. He decided to play the very traditional thing. And here he like right here, as the clock was running on my turn, he asked me if the clock was working. That's when I knew we were going to be off to an interesting start for this game. I was like, yeah, because my time hadn't moved, but that's because you get 30 seconds every time you make a move. So I was still stuck in the same minute. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. At this point, I was like, all right, what does he want? Is he going to go for knight c3, d3, e4? Is he going to play for e3, d4? I don't know. So I'm going to play this move. This cuts back some options of a quick d4, and the setup that I'm going for is I'm going to wait for this knight, and then I'm going to play f5. So it's a setup that you kind of, depending on how your opponent plays, you can get a quick e5 in. This is from the G6 Modern course, and I should mention that all of my courses are going to be 33% off by using code CONGRESS until the tournament is over. Cool? Anyway, that's after the fact. I always do a discount code during the tournaments. Use code CONGRESS. So, knight c3. Now, I play d6, and he plays rook b1. I'm like, okay, fantastic. Now I know his game plan. So his game plan is that he wants to play b4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a5 to play into b4 with my pawn. He's going to play a3 when I play a5, because that's very standard, so he can play b4. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to play c6 and play for a very quick d5. Because he's not developing in a standard way. So what I did is exactly that. I played for a very quick d5. I actually developed both my bishops before my knights. And basically in these structures, if you can successfully play this move and transform the structure like that, black has kind of solved all their opening problems, because this is white's best piece. And normally, like, for the trade of this open file, white will trade off the b pawn and open up the rook and the light squared bishop. That's how the English works. But once black gets this, black has absolutely no problems and is completely equalized. The only problem is your structure is completely symmetrical, and he went for this. And so this move, I knew was coming because it's kind of his way of liberating his pieces. I mean, if he plays, first of all, if he plays knight f3, he loses the game because I have this. Oops. It's a very nice little trick. 2 knights are hanging. You can't guard both. But, he didn't blunder that and instead played this. But if he just plays naturally like bishop d2, I mean, I just have more space. So knight e7, I mean, castles, I'm just better. I mean, f5, e4, something to block his bishop. And again, he does not open the b file, so it's a huge loss for the opening. So he plays e4. I'm sitting there thinking, it's the opening. I'm like, all right, so I kind of want to go knight e7, and after knight e7, maybe we're going to trade in the middle. But what I didn't like about this is the bishop stays alive. It doesn't get closed. And, he can trade with me once. He can trade with me twice. He can trade all the pieces. He can try to then trade queens later on. And yes, this is a bit of a weak pawn, and this position's, like, not so bad for black at all. But the problem is that this doesn't have to happen. He doesn't have to take. And I was like, why am I even giving him the option? You know what? I'm going to shut his light squared bishop down. His whole opening doesn't make sense. He has to go back, because if he does this, I'm just going to play knight e7 and we have to trade. I mean, he has no choice. He has to trade with me. And then he went here. And I was like, what? What is this? I thought he could, and then it hit me. I'm insane. I'm just completely nuts. I just thought I have knight e7, but he has bishop g5. I mean, the simplest of pins. Like, the knight no longer covers f6, so I can't play this move. And now I'm in, there's something problematic here. And look, I can take, damaging his structure. I can even kick his bishop out. But the problem is, even for one full pawn, he always has this move. And this bishop is a killer. So this is the problem with the position. So I'm like, wait a minute. What did I just do? I mean, I can't go knight e7. I can go knight f6. And by the way, if anyone's confused about this, like knight c6, I mean, this is terrible. b5. Now the b pawn's justified. Knight jumps into f6. Very bad position. It's equal, but I started thinking, and this is also where my opponent, as nice of a gentleman as my opponent might be, activated a hidden jutsu, which I was really not prepared for. My opponent started rocking back and forth in his chair. Like, just back and forth. And, like, kind of in circles. Like, live at the board. That, like, trying to release a little bit of that nervous energy. The problem is, it's extremely distracting. But I was like, you know what? It's gonna go away. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But it didn't. And combined with the fact that knight d5's on the board, I'm getting a little angry. I'm like, oh my god, this is really a problem. So here, after some thought, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to undermine this pawn. I'm going to play f5. I'm going to transform the position, like takes, you know, I'm going to have my pass d pawn. Then maybe I'll take this knight. Then I'll quickly castle. I'm going to have a protected pass center pawn. Thinking, boom. I play the move. I hit the clock and I go, holy shit, I'm stupid. Because when I calculated f5, the only logical move for the opponent here, obviously, is that he can't take, right? He's got to develop this knight and castle. Knight h3, knight e2, knight f3, castle something. And then I play f5, and I'm like, wait a minute, he can just pin himself. I just didn't even think twice about this move, because obviously if I take on e4 now, he has a discover check. He will sacrifice the knight, win my bishop, and keep his bishop alive. I'm like, what about... I just went from like a totally normal position to just clearly worse on move 13. And my man is rocking away in the seat. I'm like, bro, this is too much. Meanwhile, crazy stuff is happening in the rest of the playing hall. This round was like a sitcom. The board next to me, the player got up and wrinkled the tablecloth. So his opponent was like super distressed about it because the board is now like all bumpy. The opponent proceeded to spend like 2 minutes trying to fix the tablecloth. Like on that side of the board, he put his hand under the board. He's knocking over all the pieces to try to fix the ridge. I'm watching this like, this is nuts. 2 boards down from me, a little kid, super talented, made a blunder, so he started having a full meltdown for like an hour and a half. Like literally, I mean, banging the clock, saying super loud, like, you know, commentary of the game, offering a draw. I'm like sitting there like, yo, I cannot focus. All right, and I have a really bad position. So I took on d5, I played knight f6, and he plays knight f3. Here, white is almost just completely winning. Like, if he just plays this move, I was ready to try to fight against the bishop. Computer thinks that this bishop is so strong that it's literally lost for black, but the computer's a moron, so, you know, we don't really address the computer unless we cover its games, and I say big, you know, compliments. But he plays here, and I'm like, wait a minute, he just blundered. My opponent's idea was after queen d5, knight d5, that he would move this knight into one of my pawns, sacrificing it, winning back my knight in the center, and having a really powerful bishop. That's what he had calculated. But what he had missed, and what I thought I was really clever, right, is this, and anywhere he moves his knight, I have an in-between move. And he did miss that. So if he sacks the knight, I go knight c3, boom. Now 2 things are hanging, and I'm just winning. So I thought the best thing for him was actually to just castle. And yeah, by the way, this is still super powerful for white. I mean, this is ready to come alive. This is defended. Rook e1 is coming. I'm overextended in the middle and lacking in development. Castle's kingside is a terrifying move for black. But he decides to do it like this. I'm like, what? I'm like, wait. Actually, to his credit, he spent a lot of time on this. I was like, oh, if this, then this. Oh, that's fascinating. So he's going to threaten a knight fork himself while I go get his rook. So I'm like, okay, well, I have nothing better because, I mean, this is the best I can do. If I take this and allow this, I'm positionally just lost. Like, this bishop is way too strong. I'm like, all right, here. Where's the best place to move the king? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares. Very, very tricky decision. I did pick correctly. You have to go to f7 because you always need to make sure you have a tempo-winning move on that rook. When the knight takes it, right? When the knight takes it, you can move like knight c6. But also, if the king is on e7, it's always susceptible to a bishop check. And if the king is on e7, it's always susceptible to the knight getting away and checking me again in its escape. What I'm going to try to do in my game now is try to play against those two pawn weaknesses and rescuing my knight. Ideally, I can trade this knight off. Otherwise, it's going to take a really long time to get it home. And I have to find a way to neutralize this bishop. So I play the move knight c6. If we get to this endgame, this is just winning for black. These weaknesses are too big. And I can even play moves like bishop f8 because his knight is just laboring to get out. And my knight shockingly controls the only two bishop squares that would defend the b4 pawn. So I was ready for this endgame, and then here he played a really nice defensive resource again. He was like really sharp while he was activating that jutsu, which did last basically the entire game, and was incredibly frustrating. Like the combination of him doing that and playing very well were just unbearable. And all the stuff that was happening around. Bishop d5. This is another very tough decision for me. I mean, if I play king e7, there's always this, which I just didn't like. And even though I thought I could trade my dark squared bishop if need be, it's like, I don't want to trade too many pieces. I mean, the truth is, if we trade too many pieces, it will just be a draw. So I was like, okay, king f6. Then he played this move. Now, here I was thinking for a long time. I thought about rook d8 first. That, of course, just put some pressure here. Not actually threatening anything, but just rook d8 first to stop any knight d7 nonsense. And I was calculating knight takes b4. At this point, it's move 22, so we have our bonus time on move 40. We both have maybe like 20 minutes. It was like a very long thinking kind of game. Or you can play this move and mate yourself in one move. So that's pretty cool. That's a fascinating checkmate. Anyway, that's the guess the elo move. I had to, think about it. But then I took... And what I had calculated was bishop b7. I thought he was going to go all in, and I can't really take because I help him activate his pieces, so I was going to go king e6 here to cover anything from coming back to d5. And then he shocked me again. He played this. And I was like, oh my god, this dude is like unreal. I mean, he's playing out of his mind. He's playing all the moves that I'm like, he could do that? He just goes back. He gives me a pawn and is like, your king is dumb. It blocks your bishop. Your knights are dumb, and it's going to take them time to get out. Do some. Now all my pieces are up. Bishop b2, bishop d2. And both of our time is ticking lower and lower. It's a very complex position. So what I decided to do is bring my rook. He castles. And it's fascinating because if I take on d3 here, which I thought about, he can't take because he's just going to lose a pawn that way. And if he does this, then I have this amazing thing. Boom, boom, and boom. And the horses attack the bishop and the threat of the fork. Like, this is just unbelievably powerful horse content here, right here. And if bishop f3, just e4. Connect 4, and the bishop has to get off the diagonal. The reason I didn't take on d3 is because rook d1 is really annoying. And I thought rook d1 just won, and here's the problem. Well, not it didn't win, but it would give him a better endgame. So knight c3, rook d3 attacks my rook. So even if I play this check, I have to take the rook first. And then if this, but he goes here. This is not a fork because this is protected. So I calculated this and I'm like, that doesn't work. Okay, so let me rescue my knight first. Here engine gives f4 if pawn takes king f5. I mean, if all else fails, just go have a meeting between the two kings. Go let the two kings beat the crap out of each other. I mean, I don't know. Knight c3, and it turns out white is really much better here after bishop d2. I thought I could just go back to d5. Machine just pokes a hole in my entire existence and plays rook b1. And white is just better in the endgame because, again, my king is just completely out of place here. But he played bishop b2. And so here I was like, wait a minute, now I can check him, and yes, I can block, but I can also take. Because if rook d1, knight f4 check, and I win his rook. If knight d5, I take here, rook b1, and I fork him. And I get the bishop, and that endgame is winning for black. And then again, he shocked me with another, I'm up 2 pawns now, but my knights are completely stuck. I was like, yo, what? So here I'm thinking, he's got like 5 minutes, I got like 8 or 9. I'm like, yo, I gotta get out of there. That's really bad. How do we save this? I'm like, wait, I'm a genius. King to g5. I am so smart. So now he's going to go knight d5 because he has to cut off my circulation. And I am going to play the absolutely gangster move. Ready? You can try to find it, by the way, if you'd like to pause. I'm going to sip my McDonald's Sprite. Hits different. Knight E C1. Gluing together the horses. Gluing them together. And F4 check incoming. If I take it, this. So king to h6. I was so proud of this. Knight ec1, king g5, king h6. Now everything in my position ties together. Now my opponent activated his second secret jutsu of violently shaking his head and whispering to himself about how frustrated he was. I couldn't exactly make out what. So now he's got the spinning thing, and as his time is ticking lower and lower, he's getting very frustrated and nervous, obviously, with the time trouble. I'm sitting there trying to be as stoic as possible. I also don't have a lot of time. But it worked. I mean, the jutsu really paid off because right here I miscalculated something. What I had calculated here was that if knight e5, then of course this is always hanging, so he would take my knight and take my other knight. But if I have this, what I had miscalculated was after rook c1, and now I can't go here because the rook takes, and if this, look at this move, b5, gangster move. I calculated this, and he has no escape for the bishop. But danger levels, bishop f6, and I miscalculated that I can just do this instead of this. Because again, I'm trying to do very quick calculation with only a few minutes on my clock. Here, bishop e7, bishop f8. Just rook d7 is so strong. And then if this, I can sack. And this endgame's just winning for black, I believe. Yeah. I mean, I might not even have to do that. But, so what I did in the game, while all this craziness was happening in front of me and all the distractions, I played b5 thinking I'm so clever. I'm so clever. Oh my god, he has to take my knight. And then I'm attacking his knight and his pawn. I'm so smart. And if he takes my pawn, I take his knight. Boom, boom. And then the engine just took a giant, like, fist to my face and said that here, white can play this. Which, I'm not going to lie to you, I saw, but completely misevaluated because bishop a1, e7 is what I had missed. Because the thing is, when you have about 3-4 minutes on the clock, first of all, you shouldn't. You should have more. I was just so distracted with the whole circus that was going on with everybody. You try to calculate things in quick bursts, and sometimes you do it perfectly, like king g5, king h6, which I did earlier in the game, and sometimes you miss something. Knight to f4 is what my opponent played, and now everything in my position is defended. So if knight takes knight, I take his bishop first, and I'm just basically transforming this into a winning endgame. And what I did here, pretty instructive, gave up my b pawn, just went rook d2. He went here because if king h3 just gets mated, and if king g1, kind of the same situation, so I took. And the way I decided to win this position, well, not decided, but the way I won this position is I'm like, okay, how do I like convert this 3-on-1? You need to move your knight there. From there, it stands confidently protected by f5. It attacks g3, and I was like, I can always bring my king. Sometimes it's you don't even need to move the pawns because they're so solid. So I played knight f7, tempo winning move. I mean, he's shuffling back and forth and angrily grumbling to himself. And then I played king g5, king g4. Check, and this is a nice final move. Here he resigned. So we managed to overcome a lot that game. To be quite honest with you, we overcame complete just big drama show, not just on my board but on multiple boards. And we overcame. I was also bloated the entire round, like for no reason. I mean, I had like a very tasty and nutritious lunch, but I don't know. I hadn't eaten in like 7-8 hours, so my stomach acid was going crazy. Everything was against us this round, but not a bad start. And tomorrow, according to the current standings, I'm probably going to play like the top seed. So 1 or 2 26-30 guys. And hopefully we figure out the lighting. And if not, you're just going to have to get used to, to whatever this is. Anyway, 19 minutes gone. I'm going to eat my McDonald's. Yeah, drop some comments. Love you all. See you for round 2. Goodbye.